on with this super committee and whether they're going to get anything done. And Senator, always good having you. But now there's this fear that 2 weeks away from an important deadline in this country to get our finances under control, to Charlie's point as to whether we become another Italy ourselves, is this deadline doable?
It doesn't look good today, Neil. The Democrats have walked away from the table demanding $1 trillion in new taxes and not willing to even give the country a simplified tax code, some lower tax rates. Republicans have offered tax increases, which I wasn't willing to accept. They have offered to close loopholes, to take away credits and deductions. But the problem is the Democrats won't even talk about one cut of a program. The General Accounting Office has given us hundreds of programs that waste trillions of dollars a year, and we can't talk about cutting anything. So there's a contrast. Well, if you look at what's happening in Greece and Italy and Europe, the United States in some ways is worse off, Neil, than they are, because we have federal debt, they don't. We have debt at our state level, we have municipal debt, and the only thing that keeps us afloat right now is we can print our own money. Greece and Italy can't do that.
Well, you're right about that, and we will be busy doing that, sir. But, Senator, you mentioned an interesting point right at the outset that you were annoyed at some of the Republicans who offered tax hikes, revenue enhancers, if you will, and closing loopholes and credits and the like, without any guarantee on the other side to address some spending or cut a single program. If, Senator, the other side, the Democrats, were to counter that offer, the tax loophole thing, with cuts on the growth of entitlements, would Jim DeMint be on board with that?
Well, I would look at anything they came out with, because I respect the Republicans on this super committee immensely. I did not vote for it because I think it's a bad way to run a country, working behind closed doors in secret. The president is spinning the message right now, and our guys have honored this idea of not talking about it so they could get more done. The Democrats have betrayed that trust. They're out talking to the media today, and I'm afraid the talks have broken down.
When you say broken down, sir, are you saying that some of your colleagues are being sucked in to make concessions without the other side doing that? And if that is the case, then that means a deadline 2 weeks away ain't going to be met.
I don't think it is, but the president has played these deadlines before. He could wait to November 22nd. They could tell us the world's going to collapse. They're going to try to get us to accept a deal, because right now...
Well, wait a minute, they could also extend the deadline, right? They've done that before.
They can probably do a lot of things, but I'm not going to allow these automatic cuts to hold me hostage, because we've already funded the military for this year. We're going to have a new president and a new Senate next year and turn this country around.
But those new automatic cuts, sequestration as you call them, do kick in, sir, if you don't have that deal, right? So are you saying that you'll accept that grudgingly, but it beats pushing back the deadline?
Well, it won't cut in this year. The
Gotcha.
rescission or automatic cuts, we will have until next election to fix this thing. The time we don't have is the current tax rates expire at the end of next year, giving us the highest tax increase in history. And that's what some of the Republicans were trying to avoid with a reform of our tax code. And they were willing to put more on the table than I was.
Right.
But the Democrats want even more than that, Neil. So I'm frustrated by the process, I'm sure, as a lot of folks are. And clearly our markets can't take another dose of bad news.
We're told, Senator, that if we are at that point 2 weeks from now and a debt deal isn't reached, sequestration kicks in, and we have these $1.3 trillion in cuts over 10 years that automatically kick in, including $500 billion in defense over that period, something I know and anathema to you. But if it comes to that, Moody's, the ratings agency, has hinted it might follow S&P and downgrade U.S. debt from AAA to not AAA.
Yeah.
Would that be warranted?
Probably so. And in fact, even if we meet our $1.2 trillion goal, keep in mind, Neil, that's not cutting spending. That's
right.
Just instead of borrowing $10 trillion over the next 10 years, we might just borrow 8 or 9. We're not talking about any serious cuts or any serious reduction in our debt. and we're still planning on deficits. So we're not even close to where we need to be. And frankly, the Democrats are not going to cut any spending, just as we saw at what happened in Ohio yesterday, where you've got government workers in many cases controlling the political agenda. We have that same problem here with the Democrats in control of the White House and the Senate. They're not going to cut anything because government employees are their constituencies. Unions are their constituents. And Republicans are not going to be able to compromise in any meaningful way and come up with something constructive. So we're in a tough spot right now, and I think only a big election in 2012 is going to allow us to avoid what your colleague was just talking about. I mean, he recognized that Obama's policies are the same policies we're seeing in Europe, and we're headed towards a financial cliff right now, and I'm worried for our country, and we've got to get Americans engaged in this process.
Senator, always good seeing you. Be well.
Thanks, Neil.
All right, Jim DeMint will have a couple of busy weeks ahead of him. Meanwhile, they protest and mom and pop shops just pay.